Hello and welcome to the Ka0s Tournament Podcast. I'm Fetch, and with me today, as usual, we've got Neko.
Hey everyone.
And Kuma.
Yo.
So, let's hop into it. Pretty normal episode, nothing too crazy. We're just going over the Treasure 8 turnout, which we had over 100 players and a lot of unique decks that got brought. Honestly, more unique decks that got brought to this one than our charity event that was free last time. So, a little bit weird there, but I look forward to getting into our top 16 as there is not one duplicate.
Also, 17 people brought Blue Farm.
Oh, yeah, well, there's that.
Yeah.
Outside of Blue Farm, a lot of uniqueness. But most of those Blue Farm players dropped immediately anyways, so I personally don't get why people do that, but I don't know.
Yeah, you should at least lose more than one round before you go, right? You can easily lose your first round and bring it back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Magic is fun, or at least it's supposed to be.
Like, just a little side rant thing. I don't understand why people go and they lose their first two rounds and they're like, nope, can't do it. Gonna just give up on the money that I paid to play in this tournament. I'm just like, why? I don't understand.
I get it. If it's after 2, it becomes a lot harder to break in. You basically have to win your next 3 rounds, which can be a big ask. And if you're not feeling it, you can go and, may want to do something else with your day.
Yeah. Sometimes life happens, so you've got other stuff you got to take care of. But either way, let's get into this top 16. And we're starting out with one that you would think that I'd be like, yes, let's go. And to some extent I am. But it's a weird version of this deck. We've got Corvol at number 16.
All yours, Fetch.
So, here's the thing. This is a very weird Corvol list. Like, if you compare my Corvol list to this Corvol list, there's probably like only half the cards in common. Might be an exaggeration. Actually, I can do that right now. Let's compare these two lists here.
I mean, I don't claim to be up on what belongs in this deck, but there do seem like some interesting choices here.
So there are 37 unique cards compared to my list.
Mm-hmm. The biggest thing that I'm noticing for this list is it doesn't have Ad Nauseam, doesn't have Peer into the Abyss, doesn't even have the One Ring.
Where's Food Chain?
There is not food. Oh, I don't like Food Chain in Corvol personally.
Well, sure, but that's the stereotypical version of it, right?
That's some versions. It's not every. But I personally think Corvol and Food Chain is like there's better Food Chain decks. But
yeah,
this is basically an aristocrat manual storm. It's really strange. There's no dockside recursion like anywhere in the deck.
There's Unearth and Reanimate.
When I say dockside recursion, I mean loops.
Oh, you mean loops? Yeah, no, I don't see any loops.
Yeah, none of that.
There is Unearth, there is Reanimate, but there's no dockside loops. The only combo that I'm seeing is Pitiless Plunderer, Chatterfang, and a sack outlet.
Yeah, that works, doesn't it?
And then there's a lot of ways to get value off of sacking and a lot of ways to sack.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you've got Carrion Feeder, which not too uncommon, but a little bit on the stranger side. Of course, you have your Viscera Seer. If you're playing a sack deck, you should play Viscera Seer in it. My list doesn't run it, but that's because my list is focused a bit differently than this. Both of the altars, Ashnods and Phyrexian, and Goblin Bombardment as well.
But yeah, I mean, there's so much sacking going on here. You'd think it would be the video game industry.
But it's not even just like the recurring sack things. You've got Corrupted Conviction and Village Rites in here, as well as Deadly Dispute.
Also has Zombie Infestation, which it helps your sack plan, it helps your Corvol plan, but almost feels
what
like
year is it? What year is it?
Yeah, I feel like we need to read that.
Is it 1998 again?
So, Zombie Infestation, it's a 2 mana enchantment, 1 on a black. And then it has discard 2 cards, create a 2/2 black zombie. That's it. That's all it does. There's no loop with it either. It just gets you zombies to sacrifice.
You can discard Squee and 2 Krovikan Horrors to it and get a 2/2 every turn.
Wow. I don't think this runs any of those, but that's very exciting.
Nope.
But you can do it, and that's what counts here.
There was an old extended deck that did that.
But there's a lot of stuff where it allows you to double up on a sack. Like you've got Shambling Ghast, where when it dies, you get to choose one of the 2 things. The thing you're going to choose like almost every time is create a treasure token. You've got Greedy Freebooter, which same thing. It's a 1 mana creature that when it dies, you get a treasure token. It also gets you a Scry, which is not too bad. And Nested Shambler dies, you get a 1/1 squirrel
that you can then sacrifice.
It's like there's so many of these things. Impulsive Pilfer, die, you get a treasure token. All like it's just all of these things where it's like, oh, I can double up on a sack effect.
Yeah, Silver Lining clearly knows what he likes.
Yeah, for real. And it just means that when you have Corvol out, you just draw so much. But it's very Corvol reliant.
And what I will say is, at least from what I can tell, this doesn't have you feeding a bunch of people's heuristic studies, right? Because most of the things come back directly from Grave, so that might be the reason they want this package. Instead of casting Dockside over and over, you can get infinite mana through a way like this instead.
There are currently the best line for Dockside, at least in my opinion, in Corvold, does not resolve casting at all. It's just from the graveyard and back. But
okay, then.
I don't know. It's a very interesting list. They run Street Wraith just to cycle. But I guess when you don't have Adnaz in here, I'm just impressed they made it to the top 16 with this.
I am too. I love to see Corvold make the top 16. I was just talking about it with some friends a couple nights ago. So really cool to see it here.
Yeah. I mean, I do love Corvold. Everyone knows I love Corvold. So it's very, very cool to see it actually do some things. It's just a very different list than what I'm used to seeing. Or what I'm used to playing, for that matter. I don't know. Cool stuff. And not going to be the only unique thing we see in our top 16. But we move on to a less strange list, Malcolm Tana.
The very aptly named Just Another Teamer Pirates.
Which it pretty much is.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your Kiki combos, you've got Glinthorn, all the standard stuff. Snapcaster Mage is a nice include that some people have started to put into more things.
Are they on all 3 Final Fortunes usually? That seems unusual.
That is definitely less common.
They're also on Bring to Light, which I haven't seen in a list like this before. I'm trying to see what it gets you.
Imperial Recruiter with Glinthorn?
Yeah, I guess, right? You use your 3 mana, so your 3 colors gets you Glinthorn like that.
Dockside, a clone, Snapcaster Mage if you want to cast a spell again. Like it's a lot of mana, but does give you options. I guess if you have like an Exotic Orchard or something too. Oh, they don't even have Exotic Orchard. If you have like a City of Brass or something, you could even get One Ring with it.
One Ring Birthing Pod wouldn't be bad here either. Can you get artifacts? Nope, just creatures, instants, or sorceries. Okay.
Oh yeah, I should have known that.
One Ring.
I played Cody. I should have known that.
But it is another way to get Glinthorn. I guess it's just duplicating up on more Glinthorn searches.
Yeah, I mean, you'd still run a 5-mana Glinthorn in the deck probably, so, and that's got upside beyond that.
Mm-hmm. Plus the amount of treasures Malcolm makes you, it's very easy to get to that 5 mana early on.
Yeah.
Days? Is that typical?
Yeah, for Teamer, I think it is very typical. Some of those other lower blue decks will typically run it as well.
I mean, as someone who played Legacy for a decade, Days is a card, but it's one of those cards I've always looked at 100 card format and been like, are you going to get people with this? And if you do, is it really worth setting yourself back a land drop in a 4-player game?
I've played it in Rogsai before just because it gives you another free counter spell. And that's something that can be really valuable.
Yeah, I would think the more all-in you are, the better Days gets. And Malcolm Tana is not that all-in of a deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know either. I mean, it seemed to work out okay.
Mm-hmm.
Free counter magic can never be that bad.
Well,
Free is usually good.
usually. And then there's Disrupting Shoal, which, outside of modern, like 10 years ago.
One thing I'm seeing right away is no new cards from Lost Caverns of Ixalan, at least as far as I can tell, which is, I don't know if I want to say disappointing, but I was curious to see if they would be tacked into a Malcolm deck. Doesn't seem like in this one.
Outside of the other Malcolm, what new cards would you expect to see in a Malcolm deck?
Oh gosh, now you're putting me on the spot trying to remember the whole set. I've seen some people like testing the breaches. I don't think you run the new breaches in here. There's the one I like the new 2 mana Is It one wherever an artifact I think is entered onto the battlefield, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on a pirate. I think that's cute right now. Helps keep Malcolm around a little longer. Makes it a bit beefier.
I mean, I get where you're coming from, Neko. It feels like this deck should have got something from Ixalan. Whether or not it actually did, it does feel like it should have somehow.
Feels like the pirate deck should have gotten some pirate things.
Exactly, right? There is that new one too, the Larcenist. When it enters, gets rid of 3 of your opponent's creatures, basically. We saw that come up
I
in
do
one
like that
game.
card.
Yeah.
I don't know how good it actually is, but it is cute.
I mean, it makes them a treasure, which kind of sucks. But then again, if they want their treasure, they have to actually lose the creature. So definitely a card you got to play with some caution.
It is, but when it's good, it is good. And there are certain cards that stop certain decks. So I think that could be really good here.
I mean, I'm on Team Grasp of Fate over here, and that card's pretty close.
I guess this is a situation if it's not broke, don't fix it. And Malcolm is good, and Tana makes it a lot better too.
Yeah. We've seen a bit of a drop in the Teamer pirate lists, but still definitely not bad. Anything Malcolm. Hard to go too wrong with it.
Yeah, it's just not the flavor of the month. Decks are still just fine.
Mm-hmm. I think this, with a lot of the green decks, people were afraid to play green, whether the fear was realistic and equivalent to what it should have been is a debate for another time. But I think people are wanting to try green again, trying it in different ways, bringing it back a bit.
I would definitely agree that people are wanting to try. We'll see how well it works out. But next deck we've got not gonna be a green deck. We've got one of Kuma's favorite, Obnix.
My boy.
Obnix getting brought by Raziel.
We had an Obnix list in our last breakdown too. I can't tell if this is the same one, but the list is very similar from what I remember. I love seeing the Agatha Soul Cauldron Walking Ballista combo
It's such
in
a
here
cute
again.
combo.
Yeah, I really like it for Ob.
Wait, they've got actual fling in here?
Wait, what?
Wait,
I mean, they got the Blood Bowl version of it, throw teammate, but like they're running actual fling in here.
I love
I
that.
guess if Ob gets big enough, you just throw them at someone and they die, but like that's bizarre. That doesn't seem good.
It feels like there has to be some reason for that other than just throwing Ob at people, but
Well, if people want to remove your commander, they have to pay the cost. They have to be ready for the repercussions, and that is having a big demon daddy thrown at you.
I can just picture him in like a wrestler tights doing like a flying body press on someone.
Nixilis with a steel chair.
oh, amazing.
Yeah, other than that, it looks pretty typical.
Yeah, I do think we've really seen Obnix actually getting cemented, which it took a while for that to happen.
Yeah, like the only big shakeup we've seen recently is Agatha Soul Cauldron Walking Ballista because that's a combo with Ob.
Mm-hmm.
I think honestly that's when it got fully cemented that this was the way you do it.
Yeah, this is the best thing you can do to actually end the game.
When the deck was first getting started, people were kind of curious and debating how many of those little pingers you should actually run in the deck. How much do you want to base your strategy around that, or maybe use it as a supplement? And I think people are recognizing the pieces that are doing well, and those are the ones that you're seeing put in more, like the Kenrith Parasite. That's one you'll see.
So good.
Yeah. Flame Breather. Keswick Flame Breather is another one.
Mm-hmm. Dude, Disciple of the Vault, I hate that card.
Dockside didn't need to be any better.
Well, not only does it make it where your dock sides are better, it makes it where other people's dock sides are worse. Because if they are doing a thing where they're storming off and getting a ton of treasures and whatever, you're drawing cards every time. And not only that, for decks where you win by sacrificing things, like Malcolm or Corvol, by doing sacrifice loops, you need a way to kill the Disciple of the Vault. Otherwise, it kills you.
You can forget about Dockside Post Naws if that thing's on the field.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nasty. Disciple of the Vault, brutal card. Don't play it outside of Omnix.
I mean, I was going to push back on you a little bit, Neko, when you said, like, how many pingers do you want to run in Ob? I'm like, it's not like asking how many, like, 1/1 flyers you want to run in Edric. But, like, the more I thought about it, I was like, I think the power variance between the pingers and Ob and the different evasive creatures in Edric, much bigger. There are some amazing ones, and then there are some, ones. In Edric, it almost doesn't matter which handful of 1/1 flyers you play. They're all about equally good.
Quick side note, if you want to see a wild Edric list, go look up LJ's one that he brought to a recent tournament, because that was...
Isn't that the only Edric list?
No, but what LJ did to the list for this tournament was crazy. It's not like your mama's Edric list, right? This is new and I don't want to say improve, but
he needs to name it that, not your mama's Edric list.
Yeah.
Amazing.
But go check it out.
As we leave Omnix with talking about Edric, I want to make sure we have the time to actually talk about this, because up next we've got, brought by Tom MTG, or Tom TG, or however you want to say it, Tade Adele.
I should have known this would have been a Tom MTG list as soon as I saw somebody top with Tade Adele. Like, this guy just builds like every weird mid-range deck in the world, and I love him for it. Like, I love whatever he brings to a tournament. It always feels really good to me. And yeah, Tade Adele is my favorite 101st card of all time. So I'm actually glad to see it like spotlight a deck. And it mostly looks to be sort of a control-ish deck. He is running like a bunch of the extra turns. I wonder if, given how many artifact-based combos there are right now, your game plan isn't just play Tade Adele, take extra turns, cast mana rocks out of other people's decks if you need the ramp, and then just play their combo and kill them. Like, I think we're almost at a point in the format where you can do that.
It pretty much is. And with One Ring too, steal everyone's One Rings.
Yeah, his commander's your One Ring. Like, how good is that? His commander's not his One Ring, it's your One Ring.
Well, not only that, all the soul rings you could ever want, like so many things you could take here. I'll make no secret to the fact that I've been riding Blue's Monolith recently, and I think it just does so well into the current meta. You have all the best card advantage pieces in Rhystic and Mystic. You have the One Ring. Thada can steal other One Ring, so it's another blue deck that can really abuse that, which I love. I think we were talking a little bit about this earlier, but I think it is really the best monocolor CDH, the best CDH monocolor you could be running right now.
I mean, yeah, I would have to agree.
If not the best, it is definitely in contention for the best. I think it's probably number one.
How deep are we on One Ring in this list? Dream's Grip, which is literally twiddle that you can entwine to do both.
I mean, I just want to point out they are running not only Gilded Lotus, which weird thing to run, but it does see occasional play.
Yeah, why are you going to cast that when you can cast everyone else's Mana Crypts?
Well, I mean, you cast everyone else's Mana Crypt to get your Gilded Lotus, and then you do even more. But they're also running Throne of Eldraine.
Yeah. I mean, it's no coveted jewel, but Throne of the Eldraine is cool for monocolor artifact strategies. What I am looking at the deck list and seeing is I don't see a way to close out the game. Like, I see a lot of ways to generate infinite mana, infinite untaps, but I don't see how you actually close it out
with somebody else's artifact combo.
Not many people run artifact-based combos right now.
I mean, you've got Isochron Dramatic Reversal, and the One Ring, like, draws your library, and then what do you do?
Exactly. Like, there's no Jace, there's no Lab Man, right? There's not even that new card, the Millennium Clock, I think it's called, where you can deal 1,000 damage to each of your opponents. Like, that would be pretty sweet here.
Let's
I
not be
would
too. Is there
love
like
to see a
is there an
clock in
X
this.
draw spell? Oh my god! Speaking of crappy free counter magic, Disrupting Shoal in this deck. Wow, that's deep. Yeah, what is your actual kill here? I'm trying to find it.
I know there has
Do
to
you
be
just Nexus of
something.
Fate, take infinite turns, and kill people with your Island Walk Commander?
Is that actually what it is?
I think that's actually it.
It might
that's actually it. I think you killed Nexus of Fate.
Huh.
I mean, it's something you could do. And, like, this deck's also on display circuit, and outside of something like Subtlety, I don't see much else what you would want to flicker. It's interesting for sure. I like it, and I'm glad it
You
plays.
flicker the One Ring, but that's not the greatest.
Yeah, but when you're stealing people's artifacts, right, you typically don't want to be flickering them.
Neko. You flicker Voltaic Key and untap your One Ring. I figured
True.
it out.
Yeah, but you need
Holy
mana
crap,
for that.
I love this deck.
Yeah, it's cute.
Speaking of untapping your One Ring, Mind Over Matter in this deck.
Isn't that just draw your deck with Mind Ring with One Ring out?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. One Ring plus Mind Over Matter means your deck
literally draw your deck.
Yeah. Now it's still 5 mana, which, like, heavy investment, but you also get a lot of mana and a lot of One Rings very easily.
Tom, have my MTG babies.
And then you can display circuit in your One Ring so you don't draw yourself out, and then you can kind of pseudo storm from there. But again, you just need the piece to end, and that might just be infinite turns if your opponents don't have anything to help you.
I mean, your commander Island Walks, which might as well be unblockable in this format.
In a lot of situations, yeah.
In a lot.
Or, you just swing with your 4/6 Flying Consecrated Sphinx at that point.
Mm-hmm. Plus, Hallbreaker Horror can bounce all the blockers if there's any that you can't get through with Island Walk.
I mean, it takes some guts to try to run an attack on infinite turns combo in a tournament, but Tom apparently managed to pull it off.
Mm-hmm. The only thing I don't like about that strategy is that when you get to time, even if you have everything that you need, you still lose because infinite turns. Once the first turn's over and time's up, you're done.
Or do you? Can you demonstrate a loop that is infinite turns and attacking on all of them if your opponents have no blockers?
If you are passing the turn, the game ends. So it doesn't matter that you're taking another turn after.
But before you get to extra turns, can you say, I would like to demonstrate a loop where I, take infinite turns and attack your no blocker selves with my commander until you're dead? I believe you can do that. I believe that is a legit loop.
All your opponents have to say is play it out, and
then you have to play it
I don't think that's right. I mean, if they have something they want to do, they can say, I'd like to interrupt your loop. But if they don't, I believe you can propose a loop over multiple turns. I had this conversation with a judge like a decade ago when I was playing Legacy. And because back then the lands deck used Mindslaver and Academy Ruins as its win condition. And I was like, well, how do you, win on time then? Or how do you win the game in a reasonable amount of time if your literally win con is just taking your opponent's turn forever? And the judge said you can propose a loop where if you have a way to deal them damage on your turn every turn and you're controlling their turn, that is a loop you can actually propose and shortcut to you winning the game. Now, if it's extra turns, I don't think that works because there are strict rules about turns. But before time's up, I believe you can propose that loop.
That's interesting. I would need a judge to say. If you're a judge, let us know in the comments because I believe it's the opposite, but I don't know.
On that. Yeah, that was a decade ago. I'd like confirmation on that from an actual judge if we could. But I believe if time's not up in the round, I believe you can propose that loop.
I mean, you can definitely propose the loop. Whether they accept it is.
They don't. What I mean by propose a loop is saying if you're not going to interrupt me, I would like to do this 1,000 times, and they either say do it 1,000 times or I'm interrupting you. That's what propose a loop means.
Yeah, it's like Tivet, right? Tivet can propose that
loop. I propose a loop where I make infinite mana with Dockside. No, I don't allow it. You can't make infinite mana with your Dockside because I said so. No, that's not how that works.
If there's time in the round, you can do that because you can do the same thing with Tivet and Time Sieve, right? You can demonstrate, but that's on a much shorter clock. And if there's not much time left in the round, I don't know if that works for Thada, but we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, I think I don't know if they're allowed to tell you to play it out unless they have a way to interrupt you. If you go through the loop once and they don't interrupt you, and you try to go through the second time, they still interrupt you. I think at that point, it's a loop. But I could be wrong about that.
I'd love to hear a judge say what it is.
Yeah, let us know.
I also think it would be super cool to see the clock in this and just use the clock to go for it. But I understand infinite turns is also an effective way to do it.
I'm all about not redundancy of win cons, but multiple options. So I think the clock is an easy slam for a deck like this, at least for me.
I'm the opposite. I want as few win cons in my deck as possible. Like, I've only need to run one card to actually close the game out, and everything else is support. Like, that's a good place to be.
I don't know. Either way, very cool list from Tom.
Yes.
Very unique.
And now for the opposite of very unique, we have...
Yeah, we're going into our one blue farm of the top 16 out of our many blue farms in the tournament. Forcon making his way back and getting up to the top here.
Yes, it's blue farm, and yes, you can only be so variant when it comes to blue farm, but at least recently it seems like people are trying out a little bit of different tech. For example, this one's on Boromir, which is a piece I haven't seen before. Some decks like Lavinia, some don't. This one is on Lavinia. Some people like to play free mana Teferi. This one isn't on free mana Teferi. So there are subtle differences you can kind of see happening with blue farm at least.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are starting to run more creatures again. I think blue farm lists were down around 10, 11, 12 creatures for a while. Now you're starting to see them up at like 15 again.
I think right now the difference for how blue farm is depending on whether the pilot wants to lean more into the Nas or more into the kind of stacks creature grindy stuff.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of grindy stuff, Smothering Tithe is a piece I want to highlight real quick. This deck is on it, and I like it. I think more decks should be thinking about teching it in again. Just so much card draw in the format right now.
I never like Smothering Tithe when you don't have a way to actually have a consistent payoff. Like Smothering Tithe and Atraxa, one of the best cards. Just so amazing. But with Prom Timna, you don't have a consistent way to like just use the mana.
I mean, you have
But I guess
mana
when you
worth
have
of commanders in the command zone. That's a pretty consistent way to use the mana. It's not as good as an Atraxa, but it's definitely a sink.
Yeah. Well, and when you have as much card draw as Blue Farm does, you're going to draw into cards that allow you to use the mana. So
Well, yeah,
I guess,
that too. Yeah, they both draw you cards.
Yeah.
At least for this deck, this one has, your Adnaz, you can Born Upon a Wind. So you make mana off Smothering Tithe, maybe you Adnaz, maybe you do Born to get Flash after, or maybe you even do Final Fortune just to take the extra turn in the end step after another player's turn. I can see it being able to use it, but like you said, Betch, not in a consistent way.
It's definitely not a bad thing. And I mean, even at its worst, it just gives you so much mana. And Blue Farm, you can definitely draw regardless. So, not the worst thing in the world. Definitely something to consider putting in your deck.
What else this deck doesn't have is Talion, which people have been talking about whether or not to include it, but no One Ring, which I thought was pretty standard for blue farm lists right now.
It's not quite standard, but it's getting there. I would say most blue farm lists are on it right now.
The fact that it's no One Ring, no Talion is wild to me.
Mm-hmm.
You get at least one of them, like, every time. Some people are like, oh, you go for the Talion because it gets you more value as, like, a singular drop, but it's also easier to interact with. I don't know. I personally think One Ring's better, but the fact that neither of them is in this list.
Yeah, me too. Like, I can understand no Talion. No One Ring's a little harder for me to wrap my head around. Mm-hmm. Like, I just got around to updating my blue farm list and was like, oh yeah, One Ring's got to be in here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One Ring.
I think run both, but that's my opinion.
I mean, you could. I'm not saying that's wrong. It's just, I can understand not running Talion.
Yeah.
Either way, congrats to Forcon. Happy to see you back here and performing at the top. But up next, we've got another one of the spicy brews. Kai, Fervent Alchemist, decided to bring something a little bit more experimental.
I have opinions.
So Kai brought Thrasios and Miara, which not a card a lot of people know about. It's a mono black, 2 mana. It's a 1 and a black for an elf scout, where whenever Miara, Thorn of the Glade, or another elf you control dies, you may pay 1 and 1 life. If you do, draw a card. It's a 1/2. Which this is the only elf that you're ever actually going to play in the deck.
Yeah.
It's a wild list.
It's a wild deck choice, if you ask me. Like, I was trying to, like, during the tournament, I saw him playing this. I was kind of like trying to push back at some people in the Twitch chat, like, what's going on here? What is this? And they told me he had a video out where he explained everything. So I kind of watched the video, and his argument, I believe, was mostly that, like, the reason you run Miara is it gives you a good thing to sacrifice to run a bunch of cards that speed you up to make this kind of like a fast turbo deck. So I said, okay. So I looked at his list. Let's see, how many cards is he running in here that are like sped up by Miara? I mean, you could say Beseech the Mirror, but here's the other thing too. You have Thrasios for 2 mana as well. Oh, you don't want to sack Thrasios. It's part of your combo. It's your combo outlet. What outlet? For infinite mana? Can't you just cast the Thrasios again?
Well, you
But anyway,
say
putting that whole thing aside, like, what else is there in here? There's Beseech the Mirror. I might give you that one. Diabolic Intent. I might give you that one. What else we got?
The Weak.
Culling the Weak, sure. I'll give you Culling the Weak. The fact it's this hard suggests that, like, Miara's not doing a lot for the deck.
I mean, there is Springleaf Drum, there is Mox Amber, and Springleaf Drum you can use with Thrasios. Mox Amber getting black from is very nice.
Not even on Phyrexian Tower, so there's, like, what do we name? 5 cards that take advantage of Miara? Like, I don't know why this isn't just Thrasios Roguerack if you really want to, like, be fast.
It is on Phyrexian Tower. It's just...
it's renamed something stupid because of...
Yeah, it's the Dracula's Tomb version of it.
God, I hate it when this happens. Like, is there a way to make Moxfield not do this?
So, you mentioned earlier not wanting to sacrifice Thrasios because it was your outlet, but from what I can see here, there isn't a way to actually generate infinite mana. Like, this deck isn't even on Kinnan.
It is on Sig, though.
This deck's on Time Sieve. Am I missing something?
So, I also watched that video. Time Sieve for this list is basically after you play out a bunch of your artifacts that are stuff like Grim Monolith or Mana Vault, etc., you tap all of them and then you just pitch them to Time Sieve and take another turn. So
it's Final Fortune that wrecks your mana base.
Yeah, but most of the mana base that it's going to be wrecking is not really useful anyways. But basically,
why are you playing those cards?
Mana Vault, you're not going to play?
Yeah, Mana Vault's about the only one. I guess Mana Vault and Grim, that's true of. The rest of them you'd probably like to use on your extra turn. I guess you do something cute too. You activate Wishclaw in response to the ability, pop it to Time Sieve. But that's like
another thing
Christmas
you can
land
do.
like you wouldn't believe.
You can get rid of the One Ring with it sometimes. Because there are times where the One Ring is too dangerous for you.
Not very many, let's be real.
Not very many, but if it's after an ad nause.
I mean, if your argument for Time Sieve is it gets rid of One Ring in like the 3% of games where One Ring becomes a problem, I'm just not feeling this deck at all. I mean, props to Kai, he knows what he's doing. The deck got him to top 16, but I just do not understand the logic behind this list at all.
It's a unique list. I don't hate it, but it's different. And I think trying to compare it to other things in the same shell is a disservice to it because it has its own strategy. I can't say I personally love that strategy. I love Thrasios Tevesh, and this isn't that. And I have to kind of check myself there. But the deck seems to be able to do what it wants to do, and that's all you can really ask for in a CDH deck.
I mean, if I could say one good thing about it, like a little while back, Ken Bauman or someone had a tweet where they said like all CDH decks are evaluated on like 3 axes. I think they were something like speed, consistency, and perceived threat. And Kai is probably the master of maximizing perceived threat because every time I look at one of his lists, I'm just like, your commander is what? Ew, why? And I'm sure, I'm not the only one who thinks that. And, perhaps he gets somewhere based on people not, taking someone who sat down with a Miara deck seriously. Perhaps he seems like I'll say this: he knows how to do well with decks you would not even think were CDH decks just by reading the commanders. And there's something to be said for that. Like, I mean that in all seriousness is a good thing. Like, he's found ways to take decks that don't look like they're good and achieve good things with them.
Well, and this can do a lot of the stuff that Rogsai can do. Obviously, not having red has its downsides, and I'd say Miara probably not as valuable as Rog when it comes to providing that explosiveness. But it does give you a slight card draw, and Thrasios is definitely better than Silas.
Yeah, but that's like saying LeBron James and I can both do layups. It kind of misses the point.
Well, listen, I'm trying to say why this deck can do some stuff. I do also think it's amazing that it runs Sig. I know the video breakdown did not have Sig included in the list, and Sig is in the list for this one, and I would love to hear the reasoning for that. But I mean, I guess it's just more card draw.
It's a cool Sultai list. I like seeing Sultai trying to fit into a new shell. I like that it can do things like Necroponents, Born Upon a Wind, kind of present those wins. I don't know. No Kinnan, though. Even if you're not trying to generate infinite mana, not having Kinnan in a Thrasios deck seems like a missed opportunity to me.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, there's a decent number of things that'll tap for mana.
There's not any loops, though, for it, so I don't know about that.
I don't know. Like, if you're on the time seed plan, if you're going to try to get rid of the one-use artifacts anyway, I don't hate the idea of including Basalt with that, but I don't know. Just my thoughts on it, where I would take the
That's
deck.
fair.
But I'm not Kai. I don't have the placement Kai has.
I'm still there's more experimentation to be done with this list, even with it already being a bit out there. But it'll be cool to see how it works out and whether Kai sticks with it.
Mm-hmm.
Thrash me? More like thrash me. I'm sorry, I'll stop now.
So on that note, we move on to Kinnan. 10th place, we've got Wounded Satellite, bringing Kinnan. Everyone knows the deck. Everyone knows Wounded. For good reason.
I mean, aren't these tournaments basically top 15s and Wounded Satellite?
Yeah, pretty much.
The only thing that's different this time around that I can tell is that Flesh Duplicate has taken the place of Phantasmal Image, which...
Hey, Fetch, it's your favorite.
Yeah.
See, the sad thing is I think it's the correct choice.
I do too.
But I hate it. Why does this card have to be so good and yet look so weird?
I just keep thinking like Land Before Time. Hey, it's a long neck.
Gosh.
Someone's got to alter that into Littlefoot.
Can you imagine?
Oh, that's so cursed. I don't want to think about that anymore. We're moving on. We've got Sisay. Sisay being bought by Baneslayer, who I believe is a pretty well-known Sisay pilot.
Multiple top finishes, top 16s, I think even some top 4s.
Yeah. So Baneslayer bringing Sisay. And
a couple of interesting choices here.
Yeah, I was gonna say there's some differences from a lot of the normal things. I'll leave it to our resident expert for explaining things, though.
Yeah, so the only thing that sticks out to me as different, and I think this will be a change that most Sisay players make, is the inclusion of the, where'd you go? Ka0s Malamet Exemplar, which is a card that is a white, a green, a colorless legendary creature cat warrior, the legendary creature being the key part here. Your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, and then whenever one or more creatures you control, each with power greater than its base power, deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. So it's a tutorable Grand Abolisher that lets you draw cards off Sisay, because just having this card and Sisay pumps up Sisay's power, means that you meet the criteria to draw. It doesn't win your opponents a game. So like it's not the same thing as playing like Lavinia or Free Fairy, because your opponents can still interact on any turn that's not yours, which I like a lot.
I was going to say, you want to talk about super cute things too. If you activate Catilda, that makes all your creatures have power greater than their base power. Your Orcish Bowmaster's army has power greater than its base power automatically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's more cute than like, oh my god, but like, yeah, Ka0s 100%. This is an amazing Sisay card. This is definitely belongs in Captain Sisay.
Well, and I think the card might belong in lists outside of Sisay too.
Yes.
Oh god, yes. I bought 6 of them the other day. Like this goes in quite a few decks.
It's definitely not as good as Grand Abolisher for the majority of lists. The fact that it's not a full-on Grand Abolisher effect, it only gets rid of spells, it doesn't affect abilities at all, does
Mhm.
make a difference. Like, that is a relevant thing here. But still...
This is a warrior. Nagila runs Summoner's
Oh.
Pact.
Yep.
Oh no.
Yep. That Nagila players are also really enjoying this card. Sisay is, and then I think any blue or not blue, any white green deck will love this. I think some 3-color decks in these colors will appreciate it. I don't know if it will see a lot of play in 4-color variants, but it's a cool option. It's not an auto include, but it's a nice piece for certain decks.
I know that we're going to see it later on in one of the Atraxa lists. Well, in the Atraxa list for the top 16. So,
Oh, really? Okay.
yeah. There's some hype for it.
The 3 people who care, it's absolutely nuts in Gyruda the Unifier.
True. My friend plays Gyruda the Unifier, so she will appreciate that.
Well, yeah, like Gyruda makes all your legendary creatures have more power than their base power. Also, you get to cascade into it or with it.
That's pretty cool.
It is. The only other piece that I can think of that is new to Baneslayer's list is the Kitesail Larcenist. We saw this card on stream. It had some pretty good effects. The Ward 1, I think, is really strong. My only thoughts are I would ask why this over something like Lagrella. They have similar effects. There are pros to cons to each of them. Lagrella gives you 3 color pips for Sisay. This one is only a blue and a generic, so it's easier to cast. It does have ward, so it's harder to remove. But Lagrella is also a tutor brawl option. Pros and cons to each, but worth mention, I think, for the sake of comparison.
Mm-hmm.
We finally found the other Sisay player who doesn't run Dihada. I'm going to high-five Baneslayer through the internet here.
But as we move on into our top 8, we get even more spice. Not only do we have a bird, it is Ishai Jeska. Not Ishai Jeska. This is not any Falcon Punch. It's Ishai Jeska.
I mean, that's an interesting way to take it. I mean, the Falcon Punch is just, kill one player. This is, if you get Ishai big enough, everybody's dead.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you get some utility off Jeska as well, but mostly Jeska was someone's dying right now.
Well, and Jeska is still in the 99.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I think I'd rather kill one person a turn for 3 turns than kill everybody on the 3rd turn. So I kind of think maybe those 2 cards should be switched in their position in the deck.
Well, do you kill everyone in the 3rd turn? Because yes, Ishai deals that damage, but it's not combat damage, is it? Can you kill all 3 people at once?
Oh
with
no, it's not even
commander
combat damage. Never mind. No, it's not combat damage. The Ka0s stuff. Never mind. I have no idea why you're running Ka0s instead of Jeska in the command zone.
Well, I think you were on the right track, though, right? Because you don't kill your opponents, but you get each of them down a significant amount, which can hurt a lot of strategies. It hurts Adnos, it hurts One Ring plans. Like, it puts pressure on a lot of people.
Yeah, but I mean, what else hurts those strategies is taking 21 commander damage from a Falcon Punch. Like, I get it. Maybe you got to weaken 3 decks at once. If you're playing like it's 3 turbo decks, maybe it's better to deal them all 8 than deal one of them 24. But other than that, I feel like I'd rather just take out the strongest player, then the next strongest player, then the last guy.
So
instead of like lowering everybody's life totals a little bit at a time.
The big downside with Ishai Jeska in the past is you'll kill one person and then another person can go off because there's less counter magic at the table.
Mm-hmm.
This doesn't have that problem.
You got to be cognizant of that, but like I feel if you're a strong enough player, you can make pretty good calls most of the time around that. This though, like dealing everybody 8, like I don't know.
This also allows you to run like curiosity effects. You've got combat research, you've got curiosity, you've got Ophidian Mind.
I'm guessing that was the big draw.
Yeah, I think you need those effects too, because not having Jeska in the command zone means you lose the infinite mana outlet, the consistency
Mm-hmm.
of it at least. Yes, you have in the 99, but you have to draw it along with some other pieces. I don't even know if there are ways to generate infinite mana in this deck now that I'm looking at it. It might
Well,
just be
Jeska is
trying
not
to.
an infinite mana outlet if it's not in your command zone.
Oh, true. Yeah.
It does
I don't
still
know.
allow you to triple up on your Ishai, though.
Well, is it because you can still make it an outlet. You just have to cast Ka0s or Ishai from the command zone infinitely. So you make infinite mana with like Cloudstone. You bounce them, and instead of putting them in hand, you put them in command zone when you have infinite mana. Then you
Okay, yeah,
can.
you technically could do that.
Yeah, it's not Q. It's not like a neat package, but I don't think you can do that regardless in this deck. It's really just breach or bust. It looks like outside of combat damage.
I mean, there might be some other stuff. You still got blind obedience technically contained down the table. I don't know. There's not as many outside of combat damage. There's not as many great things to do.
Yeah, you really are kind of in on that combat damage here.
You do still have breach, so it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, I would hope there'd be something else.
Yeah,
and it
you
looks
got your
like there
Sabine
is.
stuff. Your intuition Sabine package is in there, so it's still not the end of the world there.
It's interesting. I like the take. I think you can maybe rely on combat damage a lot more right now because games are tending to slow down, go a bit longer turn wise. It does seem to paint a bigger target on Ishai's back, or maybe not. Maybe people will. If you're not threatening to Falco punch someone for 21, maybe they'll be more forgiving of it until they have to remove it.
I don't know. Whenever Jeska, or not Jeska, whenever Ishai hits the table, I get real scared, even if I'm not thinking I'm the one who's going to get Falcon punched.
Well, and I think you definitely still get scared with that Ishai hitting the table.
Yeah, I'm not ignoring Ishai on the table. Like, I'm finding my Gilded Drake and being like, mine.
Ooh, that's pretty disgusting.
It is.
Or even just a bounce effect is so good against Ishai.
I mean, I appreciate what they're trying to do here, but as someone who's been playing Smash Brothers longer than probably most people in our Discord have been alive, I got to go with the Falcon Punch.
Cap'n Falcon in Melee, one of the most fun things you can do.
I don't claim to be especially good at it, but
Kirby all
I was
the
never
way.
a Falcon main either. I was never a Falcon main.
I played Ganon.
Ganon's fun.
You and my one friend, yeah.
The worst Falcon, but still a lot of fun. Either way, enough talking about Bird Attack, which, great name, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Zito brought that. We're moving on to the man, the myth, the legend, Dom, bringing the Icron.
Hey, here it is again. I like this deck.
It's Dom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, when I think of people who consistently perform towards the top, you've got Wounded, you've got Dom. There's a few other names, but Dom
Master
is definitely
of
up
the
there.
and the Crom.
At least in Dom's case, I don't know anyone else who is performing with this deck or even playing this deck possibly, but really when you look at who's placing with Ikra, you see Dom's name across the board.
Yeah.
More people should really play this deck. It is good. I know Ikra looks like a meme, but this deck is good.
Ikra comes into play more often than people think.
Yeah. Basically guarantees you Nas at 40 plus life if you get it out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the big butt, honestly, makes a difference.
Would you say you like big butts and you cannot lie?
I definitely know Dom does.
Nice deflection there, Fetch.
But yeah, Icrom, we talked about it before. Honestly, you can go back to almost any of our previous recaps, and we've probably talked about this deck just because of how consistently Dom shows up in the top 16. But good stuff here. And in our next place, we've got another one of our top tournament grinders. We've got Punny Name on the Atraxa again.
And I guess he's still bad for not playing Dockside.
Staying bad the entire time.
So I've been looking a lot at Atraxa list recently. I think I'm going to convert my Thrasios Timna into it. And the one that really struck me here was Orym's Chant. Like, that's kind of a strange one to me. Like, I mean, I guess a lot of times you can guess who has the interaction and target them, but I almost feel like I'd be happier with another counterspell.
So this deck runs basically as many silence effects as it possibly can. There's 6 silence effects in here, effectively. You've got Teferi, you've got Grand Abolisher, you've got Quetzal, the new dude. You've got Ranger Captain, you've got Silence, obviously, and then you've got Orm's Chant.
Orm's Chant, when 5 silence effects isn't enough? I mean, that's a motto, I guess.
Orm's Chant is weird because it only stops one opponent, but at the same time, if you know one player has 8 cards in hand and a Ristic Study, pretty good to target. I do like that you can be really cute with this card and kick it in some situations. So say Nagila is about to combo off with, infinite warrior combats. You can just be like, and they have to pass, which I'm sure is rare, but it must have come up at least once.
Now I'm thinking of the Jurassic Park card. You didn't say the magic word.
Which definitely not in this deck.
No.
But and I think Orm's Chant is another. So one of the things that Orm's Chant does really well is it is a very good thing to stop someone from trying to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
It is just as effective as a counter spell when it comes to that, and has niche situations where it can be more effective in other things.
I was going to say, I guess it's just as good as a silence for stopping someone else's win, or even better because of the kicker.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's the corner case where they deflecting swat it and say, no, you can't cast spells, but that's pretty minor.
I honestly didn't even think about that being a potential interaction, but you're not incorrect.
I mean, do you really need this much silence in the deck? Like, you know more about this than I do, Fetch. Like, enlighten me here. Like, is it really that important that you have, like, that level of protection when you're playing this deck?
Is it really that important? No. Is it ever bad? Also, no. You don't have lack of mana as really an issue here in this deck. And if you ever are able to resolve one of your big hitters, you win the game. So having more silence effects is really impactful.
Fair enough, I guess. I just kind of don't like you have to make a decision with it.
I don't know if you make a decision. I like it because when you are, you play Atraxa, you get to look at the top 10. It's nice to have some redundancy into options, or at least guarantee that you're more likely to hit one of the silence pieces that you need if you're trying to win that turn.
Well, and honestly, Atraxa, partially because it's a 4-color list, and partially because Atraxa just enables a lot of things, you can get really tight on options. Like, we still see a ton of diversity when it comes to what people are running in Atraxa, but having additional silence effects is never something you're upset about.
I mean, I don't like drawing my second copy of Grand Abolisher, but yeah, I see your point.
Well, if you've resolved the first copy of Grand Abolisher and you're not winning the game, then what are you doing?
Yeah, I agree. I'd rather have 2 than 0 a lot of the time, for sure.
With that said, I don't know if I'll be curious to see if Ka0s stays. I would be more likely to see Orm's Chant make the next cut than Ka0s does.
You want to see if Ka0s makes the cut?
Yeah, I do.
I don't know. I kind of feel the opposite. Like, Ka0s shuts everyone off every turn, and probably not in this deck, but like has the potential to draw cards. I guess your Bowmaster's token will draw you cards.
Technically, yeah.
I think that's about it, though.
I mean, either way, a lot of experimenting still to be done with Atraxa. I don't know if anyone is ever going to nail down one exact list where it's like, this is the 100 cards that you play.
It's going to be like Sisay where the White Captain, where nobody can agree on the 99.
Exactly. There's always going to be somewhere between 5 and 15 cards that people are debating about. And I think Orm's Chant and now Ka0s is going to be in that debate.
I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's healthy for there to be that debate in the format. And we've talked on a couple of weird decks today, decks that are unique. And while we can talk about them, point at certain things that we don't jive with, it's really cool to see people bringing new and unique shells, trying out different commanders, trying out strategies with commanders that are different than what we're used to. Keeps the format fresh, helps have a bit of a surprise factor too in some cases. It's just, in my opinion, really cool to see.
Yeah. But I think that's enough Atraxa talk. We move on to Comedian. Ian getting 17 points and then unfortunately losing in top 16. But 17 points on Tevesh Kodama.
I think that was third on my list of top 10 decks, wasn't it?
Yeah,
It was.
I guess Ian agrees with me.
apparently. Well, and honestly, the more I look at the deck, the more I think a lot of players should start picking this up. Like, I think Jamaican dude Ashani would do really well on this list.
Oh yeah, you'd always have it.
It's
Mhm.
a very controlly list. It does a ton of value. Yeah, you've got 2 5-drop commanders, which is pretty rough, but you have access to basically the best colors in the game. You can argue that white might fit in over one of these, but you can't go wrong with Grixis, and the amount of value that these commanders get you is actually insane.
Mhm.
I mean, when you run something like Tevesh as a commander, you can afford to run just like lots of mana ramp in your deck. Just ramp into the Tevesh and then make up for all the cards you spent.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like, I kind of like it better than Tymna as a card draw engine.
Dang. I actually don't know if I disagree with you as a card draw engine
Yes.
alone. Tymna has some
I mean, the
upsides
fact Tymna gives you
outside of-
white counts for something, but like,
Yeah.
I love Tevesh. Tevesh, I think, is underplayed in this format considerably.
I think Tevesh is when I think of the monocolored partners, it's like Rog, Malcolm, Tevesh,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and those 3 are insane.
I mean, you made Kamal cry.
I would have said Kodama more than Kamal, but
Well, I'm the guy who likes stacks, so I'm gonna say Kamal.
I get
It's
it.
not good. I know. I wish Tymna Kamal was good. It's not.
Someday, maybe.
When there's no more time limits and rounds, maybe.
When we have finally banished card draw from this format.
Mm-hmm.
The heat death of the universe.
Exactly. But right now, we've got all the card draw in the world with Tevesh Crom.
And I love the manual storm you can do with something like Displacer Kitten. I love Displacer Kitten, and Tevesh and that kitten are chef's kiss, match made in heaven.
Ledger Shredder in here over Fairy Mastermind is kind of interesting. I guess it protects Tevesh better. That's probably it.
Protects Tevesh better and doubles up somewhat on the Crom effect, which can have its value.
Well, yeah, but I mean, so does Fairy Mastermind, is what I'm saying. Oh, no, Fairy Mastermind, they draw their second card, not their second spell. Never mind. Never mind. Ignore me.
I do think Fairy Mastermind is more consistent for drawing, but Ledger Shredder definitely not bad.
I mean, this thing's got 3 in the button grows, which probably is relevant when you're trying to protect a Planeswalker.
That I definitely think is the more important thing.
Yeah.
There's also a lot of debate you could do as far as like what is actually the best 99 here.
I gotta say, it's interesting to me they're running Adnaz, and they have an average mana value with Adnaz of 1.39, which definitely seems on the high side for an Adnaz deck, although not so much you couldn't do it.
If you just Adnaz at end step, you're happy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
you just don't go as deep.
The sack on this guy to Naz with Hullbreaker Horror in the deck like is something, but I mean, people played PETA for a long time. I guess it's not the worst thing to do.
I like Hullbreaker Horror here though, because it again lets you win with Tevesh in the command zone. It's another strategy there, so I think it's worth it.
I just love how good Talion and the One Ring slot into the game plan for this deck.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely.
I wouldn't be surprised if there are games where you're drawing 20 extra cards across all of your stuff, if not more.
Yeah,
and that's
so
not
I heard
even
you like drawing
games.
cards, the deck.
Yeah. Yeah, for real.
One thing I am surprised not to see is Necropotence. You're already running Born Upon a Wind. It seems like it would be a good include here, but maybe you want to preserve the life a bit more.
I mean, you have a million ways to draw cards that don't cost you life. Maybe that's the thinking. I don't know. I kind of you got the whole shell. You got Beseech the Mirror. You got like you said, Born Upon a Wind. You've got Dark Ritual. It's like you run every card that would like let you do good things with the Necropotence. But it's got to be the life total thing. I don't know what else to say here.
I think part of it is not just the life total, but the fact that it's the triple black. Triple black is a lot harder
to do in a 3-color deck. I mean, you're running Beseech the Mirror, right? Like, that's triple black.
Yeah, but Beseech the Mirror is triple black to, depending on the situation, basically win the game. Which I guess Necro can be too.
Also Necro, yeah.
I guess Necro can be too. Necro just has a higher cost. Not as far as mana, but as far as, like, the cost of actually using it is pretty significant. shuts off breach depending on how you're doing it. It has it where you pretty much have to invest and commit to it. And if your necro goes wrong, then you can't just fall back on, oh, I draw all the cards in the universe.
Yeah, it's kind of all in, but then again, so is Nas.
Yeah, but Nas can be done at instant speed and doesn't have the
yeah,
same...
I know what the difference is. I realize why Nas is in like every deck and Necro's in some of the decks, but like, I mean, I guess that's just it. Maybe it's like the second or third best thing at everything the deck wants, and so maybe it's just not worth running at that point. I'm not saying I think it's correct to run it or not. Like, I'm a little agnostic here. Like, I kind of see Neko's point. Like, it is kind of, a card you really have to ask the question about.
I think it's worth consideration, but I do agree with it not being in the list personally.
Yeah, I wouldn't tell you were wrong either way. I can see a case for it and against it.
I mean, top 16, right? 17 points. It worked. So whatever they were doing, it worked.
Comedian, that scrub, he doesn't know what he's doing at all. Why is he playing Necropotence?
Yeah.
It's Comedian. I don't care what he brings. He has a chance of making it to the top 16.
Remember a tally?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I remember a tally. I was one of his wins that day because he freaking flipped my culling ritual.
Real quick, too, I want to highlight a new card in this deck that was seeing a lot of other play during the tournament, Mists of Lorien. So it's a blue, 2 colorless sorcery with Replicate for a blue. Return target non-land permanent and each other non-land permanent with the same mana value as that permanent to their owner's hands. So you can bounce all your 0 mana rocks, replay them, bounce all of your opponents. You can bounce a Thrall and bounce all of the rocks at the table, which I think is cute. You could remove people's Ristic studies potentially. There's such a high ceiling for this card, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Psych Rift that you can shape a little bit. But I mean, the other thing too is it bounces your own stuff where Psych Rift does not. So I mean, I think there's some cute things you can do. Your bounce my dockside and all your like talismans is pretty cool. Like, I think the card's decent. I'm just a little unsure it's good enough to like be in a format where we have stuff like Psych Rift.
I think the ability, like you said, to be able to play your own stuff again is what could make this card really cool.
Yeah, because I guess like versus the stacks deck or something, you could bounce all the 2 or 3s, then try to win on your turn, or you could just treat it like Chain of Vapor or something and bounce all your 0s. Though you're paying 3 to do that instead of 1, which is kind of a huge difference.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about this card is that it is sorcery, and that can be limiting.
Yeah, I'd be much more interested if this was an instant. As a sorcerer, I think that's just kind of the final nail in the coffin on it. I'm not a super fan of this.
It definitely has some upside. I don't think... I think people experimenting with it is something that is valid. Whether or not it actually finalizes as a good card to run, I'm less confident in. But the fact that you can immediately replay your stuff is really relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we haven't really had this kind of effect before to be like, oh yeah, we tried that with this other card and it didn't work. So this is kind of a unique effect. So I do think it is worth seeing what people can figure out with, but ultimately I don't think I'm optimistic.
Kinda combos with Mystic Reflection in a weird way.
It does
it?
In a weird way.
Kind of.
I knew I bought that card for a reason.
Thing, I think the big reason Mystic Reflection is run is because you can do some dumb stuff with it and Tevesh.
Mm-hmm.
But like if you have a Dockside on the field or a Bowmaster on the field.
Stop, I can only get so erect.
But it there's a lot of experimentation that can be done. We're in a wide open format, honestly.
We are.
Like there's so many cards where it's like, oh, this is an interesting card. I don't know if this is worth it, but we can try it out. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not quite good enough, but there's a lot of room for experimenting right now in our format.
For this card in particular, it had I feel the golden moment where it was a blind obedience. People were playing Docksides. There was a ton of tap treasures. Someone plays this and just completely sets the board back. All those treasures were gone, stopped people from being able to untap and win. It was really cool to see, actually, as an introduction for me for this card.
Fair. So as Collector Roof is a 2-card combo.
Oh yeah, fair. Yeah, Collector. Well, Well, I was also thinking about like how this works with Dockside is pretty disgusting, just in general.
I mean, bounce your own dockside always makes a card worth a second look.
Yeah.
You can bounce your own Dockside, bounce someone's Blind Obedience in the same breath. Seems cute.
That's something.
Either way, though, we move on to our final four. And we've got another deck that is running Mystiflorian, but a little bit more of a cheeky deck. One we've actually seen a small uptick in play of. We've got Heliod the Radiant Dawn. It's the Phyrexian Heliod.
Yeah, my initial reaction to this was just another Azorius deck with no win cons, but I'm starting to wonder if I might have been a little bit wrong about that. This one's been putting up top results a little bit consistently here.
Yeah, instead it's just another Azorius deck with some win cons, even though they're weird ones.
An Azorius deck has never won a game of Magic Fetch. Don't tell people lies.
So I would be remiss if I didn't mention the game we saw with this deck on stream. Coveted Jewel is a deck a lot of people don't like, not only because of its high mana cost, but the fact that it directly helps your opponents. And it was played in the game we watched, and we just saw it get passed around the table for like 2 full rotations. People just swinging in, drawing 3. It was hilarious to see.
I don't think I've ever seen anyone resolve a Coveted Jewel and win the game. I'm sure it's happened, but like in my own limited experience, I don't think I've ever seen it.
I don't know. It's a cool card, even though a lot of times it feels pretty bad, but also that draw 3 on ETB and the fact that it does get you the tap for 3, not too bad. And especially in a deck like this where once you flip Heliod, 6 is nothing. Like, reducing something by 6 mana is practically just by default, especially with how much draw is in our format right now.
Mm-hmm. Guys, I think I just cracked Mists of Lorien. So you play this, right? You tap it for 3
Okay.
after you draw your 3 cards, play Mists of Lorien, bounce it. Your opponents can't have it anymore.
Yes.
Cracked.
They also can't have
we
it if I don't
solved
play it.
Yeah, but then you don't get to draw 3 cards. And what are you doing then?
I play my Mystic Remora, I guess. I don't know.
But I do think Heliod very quickly catching up, if not overtaking Shorkai as far as best Azorius list.
I mean, I think at the moment it's ahead. We'll see if it lasts.
Well, and to be fair, the meta right now is exactly what Heliod wants. Everyone is drawing cards, and Heliod is like, when you draw cards, it helps me.
Mm-hmm.
When you activate the One Ring, I get to be Omniscience for a turn.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, Heliod 2 allows for a strategy that a lot of artifact decks are wanting to do right now, because there's so many really good artifacts that are being printed in this last few sets, whether it be, All Will Be One, March of the Machines, even as recently as Ixalan. You have these 5-6 mana cards that are crazy effects, and now you can play them and abuse them, which I think we're seeing why this deck can perform well.
Yeah, I mean that's something I hadn't considered, but definitely true. How about running even the score? In a world of One Rings, I feel like you're not paying triple blue for even the score hardly ever. For those who don't know, X and 3 blue instant costs 3 blue less if an opponent drew 4 more cards this turn. Draw X cards. Like, how good is that in like One Ring the format when you have a Heliod out? It's like, how many cards did you draw? Cool, I get to draw that many for free and then some.
Well, and the fact that it's an instant.
Exactly.
Like, for Heliod, that doesn't make as much of a difference because it's already given flash. But it is just I'm going to draw like 20 cards here.
Yeah, drawing 20 cards and then being able to play them all at flash speed seems pretty good.
Oh.
Yeah, this is the cutest little piece of like anti-One Ring tech I think I've ever seen. Like, and I actually don't mean that in a bad way. Like, I'm almost about to go put one of my TCG player cards. This might be legit.
Well, not only that, this deck seems very well situated to win second. A player presents a win, it is countered, there's a big stack interaction, a lot of cards are drawn through Ristic Study or what have you, and then Heliod can just kind of sneak in there with a reduced cost, flash speed, and slam something big on the table.
Yeah, I mean, winning second or third is huge, and Heliod has the ability to do it in the command zone. This is almost like Azorius Yiva in a lot of ways.
Actually, that's a great way to describe it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yiva won one of these tournaments.
I mean, I'd say it's better than Eva, mainly because of the cost reduction.
Probably, yeah.
But
I'm just saying, the ability to win instant speed has made decks like Magda and Yiva win tournaments. Like,
yeah, it has.
don't sleep on that.
One card I would love to see in this deck too is that new 6 mana artifact from Ixalan where your spells can't be countered, and then you can discover 5 at your end step.
Oh,
interesting.
yeah. I know that new card.
I think there's a few too many instants in here, though, to like get a ton of value out of that. I feel like a lot of the time it's going to be like Phyrexian Arena that makes your spells uncounterable.
That's what's good about it, right? Like if not only does it make your spells uncounterable, if at worst it draws you a card, seems pretty good, right? Because you can put the instant into your hand, and
it's true.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm putting it in my high power Maelstrom Wanderer deck, but I don't know. I think it might be a little too cute for CEDH.
Slam Dunk and Belby.
Oh yeah.
I don't think Belby is good, but no. I do have a
Didn't
Belby
Comedian
list
play that
on
one
my
for a
box
minute,
field.
like when it first came out?
Yeah, he did. He had a Belby Hulk deck. I honestly, Belby is one of my pet cards, but I don't think Belby's good enough. Just the fact that you're so limited when it comes to card draw is backbreaking. But enough talking about two-color bad jank. We've got more two-color jank, but of a very different variety. Ka0s Sakashima, as the world is back and bringing Sakashima to the top.
This is one we haven't seen at the top tables in a while.
No.
And I mean, the deck is not bad at all. Like, I don't know if it was just people got too frustrated trying to play it in a tournament. I mean, this is a tough one to play in a tournament.
Oh, definitely.
You have to be extra precise in how you track everything. Like, I just feel like a lot of people decided this deck wasn't worth the headache, even though it was very strong.
Well, and it's challenging to play, and you also have to make sure that who you're playing against knows how to, like, interact with it in a weird way. Obviously, not the interaction points themselves, but a lot of people see Ka0s Sakashima and just kind of freeze.
It's possible we haven't seen it as much in the bigger scene because of creature removal being more prevalent. Because you really need to develop and get a couple Krarks on the board before the deck can consistently do its thing. And I've seen many a time players with only Krark and Sakashima Krark fail multiple flips, turn after turn, and just lose the game because of it. The variance this deck adds is also its strength, but also its biggest weakness.
Yeah, that's kind of a big thing that would make me reconsider this one in a tournament. Do I really want to lose a tournament because the coin flips didn't go my way? Like, literal coin flips didn't go my way? Even if that's unlikely, do I even want to take that chance?
It certainly has its downsides.
See, I gotta say this for it, though. I don't know if there's a deck in the format that, like, once it gets ahead, is any harder to get out of the first place. Like, when this deck gets ahead, it stays there. More so, I think, than probably any other deck in the format.
Mm-hmm.
If you have multiple Krarks and, like, multiple pieces of interaction, nobody's ever going to get you off of what you're doing, ever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, pretty much. Ka0s Sakashima at this point is a pretty known factor. Some people might have forgotten how to play against it, but a lot of people know what the deck does and know what it tries to do.
Even if you know what it is and what it tries to do, though, being able to stop it is a whole nother matter. The way this deck can abuse free interaction and just repeatedly use it, bounce it back to hand, and present it again for the next interaction point is wild. And when you're making so many copies, there are very few things that can stop you. There's Flusterstorm and maybe Mindbreak Trap, and that's it.
Flusterstorm is about it.
I do think Ka0s Sakashima is one of the best control lists we have in our format. But we're not done with our two-colored jank, as we've got an even weirder one in our second place. Unfortunately, the finals, the player for this had some tech issues, so it caused some major problems and pretty much took them out of the game. But we've got Tevesh Kodama.
So you guys know how, like in classic science fiction, where like the super intelligent computers like taking over the spaceship or something, and they defeat it by like giving it like a logical paradox to think about or something. That's my brain when I saw this deck. I was like, ooh, Tevesh, but Kodama, Tevesh, but Kodama, error, does not compute. Like, I'm not saying the deck's bad. I'm just saying, like, you took something I love and something I don't like, and you smashed them into each other. I'm kind of interested to see where it lands.
So this is one of the most focused Hulk decks that I've seen. Weirdly enough, even though you have two very expensive commanders, you've got one that does crazy card draw and one that, once it gets out, does a ton of ramp, as well as not just like ramp of mana, but also you can cheat out creatures and things. And it's actually pretty scary once it gets going. It's just the startup time takes a bit.
Yeah, there's so many weird cards in here. It's kind of hard for me to wrap my head around how the deck works. Like, I see what the general plan is, but it's kind of like it's hard for me to imagine a typical game of this deck. Like, I mean, sure, if I goldfished it or something, I'd figure that out. But just looking at it, it's hard to imagine what a typical game looks like.
The core plan is you've got Protean Hulk. You can use your Tevesh to sack your Protean Hulk, and then you can get Activated Sleeper. If you already have another sack outlet, you can go Activated Sleeper and Dosen.
Yeah.
And from there, you've got a Protected Win. If not, then it gets a little bit more complicated, but you've got plenty of ways to get Protean Hulk effects. And, like, because you've got Activated Sleeper, you've got Body Snatcher, you've got Body Launderer, and then you can do some kind of infinite. There's like Malira and Lesser Mastercore as a combo.
I just noticed we're on One Ring and Collector Oof. I gotta salute you for that one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this deck looks pretty parasitic as well. Like, you're gonna kind of rely on some blue players a little bit here, which I mean can work.
I don't think this is a deck that would work in other times of our format right now.
Mm-hmm.
No.
But with how much card draw and how much blue is pervasive and relevant in the meta, and with the One Ring being what it is, I feel like now is a time where this deck can work where it normally couldn't.
Yeah, I do think it sneaks its way in there with a couple of the prevailing strategies in the format pretty well. I mean, you're also going to be playing with fire when you bring Golgari to the table, but,
True.
I think we might be in a spot for it a little bit.
Kodama's neat too because you can kind of cheat things out, which can get around interaction, which is neat. And I hadn't considered this before, but the synergy between Tevesh and Kodama is cute. You make a thrall, and then all of a sudden you can put something 0 cost onto the battlefield.
I didn't even think about that.
I mean, this deck is another deck that's just power out Tevesh and make up for it. Like, you've got all the 1-mana dorks, you've got culling the weak. I mean, you can also just dump an early Tevesh and then just draw the cards back.
I think this is actually one of the best decks for Delighted Halfling, weirdly enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, I give you that. Not a fan of that card, but yeah, this is definitely the place for it.
I think it does very well here for sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of unique things that this deck can do.
Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see more gameplay from this deck because I look at it and I understand the strategy. Like, I know how the deck wins, but I want to see how it gets to that point in a
Yeah.
deck when there are 3 other people trying to win at the same time.
Well, and it's really sad that the pilot Merlin basically got removed from the game from tech issues. Technically, they still stayed in it, but their camera was freaking out. They lost their hand because of that, and they did have multiple times where they actually played stuff that was very impactful for the game, but they never got a hand, and they lost their opening hand at like turn 2 or 3 because of camera issues. And that's just kind of that happens sometimes. And I know they're planning on using their winnings from here to upgrade their setup a bit. because they did still get second place, so they do still have a decent winning here. And I look forward to seeing this deck in the future. Like, I want to see this deck do something and actually see it on stream perform well. Because it's cool, it's unique. It does some stuff that other decks can't. And Tevesh and Kodama together is really interesting and gets you a ton of value once you get it out.
I agree. I like I said earlier, I like seeing cool decks like this, so hopefully they come back. What's the pilot's name here? It's Kimara?
Merlin?
Whatever it says on top. I am bad at pronouncing names, so forgive me.
Merlin Pets is what it's showing at for EDH Top 16. And then on Moxfield, it's showing up as Chimera, I think.
Chimera. Oh, that makes sense, yeah. I was thinking like Chimera, but still really cool.
Either way, very unique deck, very cool. I'm very happy that they were able to perform as well as they did. Sad that they basically lost to technology, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
In first place, though, we have another familiar name. We've got Temujin back again with this Tivet. Temu apparently took a short break from CEDH for IRL reasons. So they were out for a month. And they came back and decided, I want to make sure people know that I am still a pilot to be reckoned with. And man, did they do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, usually a blue farm player, right?
No. Temu came in and brought the Tivet from the very first tournament and won their very first tournament.
I must be thinking of someone. I'm thinking of Tremenek, never mind.
Oh, yeah. Tremnek's normally a blue farm player, but no.
Also, Temujin has had multiple top placements besides the win. I think they even won one as recently as 3-4 months ago with Tivet.
Yeah, their very first tournament that they ever played, they won with us.
What was it? That was their first one. Wow. Okay.
That was
nice.
their first tournament. Yeah.
Impressive.
And now they're coming back and doing it again. And they've been getting top 16s pretty consistently too.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like Tivet just fits their playstyle exactly. And a lot, for some reason, people have been being like, "Oh, Tivet's not good anymore." I don't get it.
What?
And I hope that this makes people realize, no, Tivet is still absolutely good.
Someone please tell me why Tivet isn't good anymore.
I think
it's like the artifact deck that doesn't care about blind obedience.
What happened is Tivet came on the scene, dominated for a bit. People started to learn how to play it a little bit. So then you had a bunch of pilots who had picked up the deck, realized they were struggling with it all of a sudden because people were learning, and there was some thoughts on whether or not the deck was still good because people were struggling with it. The answer is Tivet is still good, and it's not going anywhere in the format.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, now you have it where Tivet's no longer a deck that people don't know how to deal with, but it's also still just powerful enough by itself. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like fighting games are a thing that I follow. And recently for Street Fighter 6, one of the characters, DJ, started winning a bunch of events because one person was really good with them. And people were like, "Oh, it's OP, because they didn't know how to deal with it." And then they realized how to deal with it, and the person was still winning. And people were like, "Ah, nah, it's bad." It's just like, huh?
It's called copium.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, it seems like people will always make excuses when it comes to this thing is good or this thing is bad because I'm either winning with it or losing with it or whatever.
I mean, if I'm winning with it, I'm going to tell you how terrible it is, right? Oh, this is terrible. You don't need to nerf this.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's the idea that the meta changes based on people's perceptions of it more than anything else. Because Magic's unique that we get a lot of cards, which change up a lot of things, but people see old cards plenty of times and realize, oh, they're good. And then they become things like meta.
Well, and Tivet came out and no one talked about it. No one cared about Tivet. And then a couple months after, like a few sets released, and no new cards that really affected the deck. It wasn't like suddenly this thing got introduced that changed the game plan entirely. It was just people figured out, oh, this actually works, and this is actually something that is good, and having a 6-mana commander isn't the end of the world. We're still able to do things.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. When I first thought, I was like, oh boy, another 6-mana commander. Chuck it on the pile. Next.
Well, and then Atraxa.
And then
I had basically the same reaction to Atraxa.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for Tivet, people were trying to make it work and people were doing okay with it. And then Displacer Kitten came out, and that's what really got people to look at the deck and say, take another look, like, oh, this was actually good, maybe all along, and Displacer Kitten just breaks the ceiling for it.
I don't know. But either way, huge congrats to get what I think is now one of the few players that have 2 wins in a Chaos event. There's a few others, but it's not a long list.
And this deck looks very similar to the last time we talked about it. It looks... The only thing I can think of that's different this time is it has like Talion and maybe 1 or 2 other cards, but by and large, same shell.
Dauntless Dismantler, the new stacks piece got introduced in the Ixalan set. That came in, and I mean, it works very well for it.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, just very well done to Temu. But that is the end of our top 16. And man, we did a lot of talking. I mean, it makes sense. We had a lot of unique decks, a lot of very strange decks, a lot of decks that if they had not made top 16, we might have talked about anyways, as we're moving on to our official, unofficial off-meta champion of the tournament. And there's a handful of decks in the top 16 that we very well could have highlighted if they weren't already being talked about in the top 16. But because they were, we narrowed it down to 2 decks. One, using a brand new card, Francisco and Malcolm, which Francisco, not quite as impactful of a commander as some of us might have hyped up from the idea of getting a partner.
Yeah, I know Jacoby's pointing his monitor right now, like, yeah, it made tournament, you know.
Yeah, Jacoby got us hyped for that, right? We were hoping for the Rakdos partner. We were ready for it, and Falcon.
We got
I think I said something like, if they're smart, this card will be terrible. It looks like they were smart.
I don't think Francisco is completely terrible. It has some potential, but it's definitely not. It's no Tevesh, I'll say that.
Okay, I won't say it's terrible. I will say it's extremely narrow, and that's what partners should be: extremely narrow or terrible. Because, like, what a bonus that is.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll amend that. It's narrow. It's narrow.
Yeah, Malcolm Francisco, a very cool list, and does some interesting things. You do Malcolm stuff, you do Francisco stuff, some nice pirate tribal. But even though Malcolm Francisco, a interesting deck, we decided to go with something a little bit different.
A little bit different, he says.
I mean, they're the same colors, at least, if nothing else.
They are the same colors. We went for another Dimir list, as we've got Gyruda, Doom of Depths.
Wait, Fetch, I thought we were talking about Gigan Cyberclaw Terror. What happened?
You're right, it is Gigan that we're talking about. The deck we're looking at here is Gigan Garbage Collector by Wigs. Gyruda, Gigan, same thing. I like to call this Clone Storm.
Mm-hmm.
So for those of you who don't know, Gyruda is a companion, not relevant in this instance, that has it where 6 mana, 4 colorless, and then 2 of blue-black. And when it enters the battlefield, each player puts the top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. Then you put a creature with an even converted mana cost from among those cards onto the battlefield under your control.
I can't even.
So basically what you do is you just start flipping through cards, and this deck runs so many clone effects. Like, it's actually insane, the amount of clone effects that are in this deck. So you just flip, you hit a clone, you do it again, and you can just mill through everyone's graveyards. And outside of clones, you also have a bunch of really impactful even cost cards, such as Tidespout Tyrant, and Razaketh, and Villas, and Big Jin Gataxias, and a few others too. It's such a weird, unique list. It almost feels like Kinnan, but bad.
I don't know if I would go
more accurately.
I don't know if I would go that far. It's fun though, right? It also runs Ulamog as a shuffle titan here, so you can not mill yourself.
I think it's actually the one even cost, or the one creature they have that isn't even cost in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
It is, in fact, the only one.
Well, it's so cute, right? Because the idea is you clone, and then the clone dies in most cases due to the legendary rule. So you put it in the bin, you hit Ulamog, and Ulamog shuffles in all those clones. So you just go again and you recycle them.
It's an adorable deck, and it can do some really cool things. It definitely, I'm not going to say it's ever going to be top of the meta, but it is cool. And it's creative. Yeah, it is creative. You run Heartless Summoning in it, which honestly is insane in this deck.
Also, Thassa's Oracle is a 2 cost, so even. And so you can just hit Thassa's Oracle and have the other piece in hand sometimes.
So you can do some stupid like Gitrog-esque loop where you mill your whole deck out and then get Oracle back.
I mean, that's one of the ways you can do it.
The win con.
You can also just mill people out.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
You can just infinitely go through and mill someone out.
I mean, you're in Dimir. You might as well run Consult, Tainted Pact, Oracle. It's basically free.
And you do.
This deck is on Panharmonicon. That's how deep we are into this.
Yeah, and they're not on Entomb, which just irritates me to no end. It's like, you guys can Entomb and reanimate a Razaketh, right? You don't have to like mill your deck and hope you get it.
No, only flips.
Only flips. Heart of the Cards.
Honestly, Heart of the Cards is not a bad name for this.
Also, there were 2 of these brought. Like, we're talking about this one because this one got a win, but there was a second one, wasn't there?
There was. There was a second one brought.
What, did 2 people lose a bet?
I honestly think it's a super cool list. Like, this is a list that you sit down, you record a game with, you put it up on YouTube, and you get 1 million views. Obviously not actually 1 million, but like, a lot of people are going to be like, huh? What?
I mean, I was going to say this would be something for the people who are like, winning with Thassa's Oracle is so boring, but you're kind of winning with Thassa's Oracle.
Oh, no. I just realized something.
I realized something too. You go first.
Mine is probably less exciting than yours, but I just realized how disgusting Dothy is in this deck.
Yeah,
oh, gross.
Because they mill 4, yeah, I mean, that's shoot. That might as well be a Praetor's Grasp.
For real.
Hold on, I did a silly thing. I opened up Mox Field to compare it to the 2 decks, not realizing that I had accidentally compared it to another deck list of mine that I had opened. So I was like, there are 89 cards different in this deck? What? And I was like, I'm actually getting the comparison here, so bear with me for one moment. But I was like,
is this one going to take the record away from Narset Enlightened Master for like the most cards that are only in it?
So it's not 89 cards, but there is a 29 card difference between the 2 Gigan decks that were brought. I thought these might have been friends who brought the same list, but there's
how many ways can you build this thing?
Apparently a lot.
Apparently 2.
One of them doesn't seem to be on the Shuffle Hulk piece, so that's interesting.
Is this like Leibniz and Newton inventing calculus at the same time?
I think it might be. And if this is calculus, then I look forward to seeing it.
Oh no, this isn't calculus. This is smashing Hot Wheels cars together. But like, I mean, it is creative.
Sometimes you want to sit down and you want to have fun playing a game of Magic, and this will do that. Unless this was on stream for one of the games, and we saw Void Winnower hit the field turn 2.
Oh no.
Yeah. So that's the one scenario in which you don't have fun playing this deck.
Isn't Void Winnower an odd CMC?
It's an odd CMC that makes it where you can't cast any of your stuff. Because a Kinnan flipped into a Void Winner.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah.
I thought you said this deck pull out a Void Winnower. I'm like, really? On turn 2?
No. Kinnan flipped into a Void Winner on it was either turn 2 or turn 3, and it's just like, your entire deck is built around even costs.
Mm-hmm.
What are my answers to it? Psych Rift and Deadly Relic? Damn. They're actually kind of helpless to that, but I mean, if you gotta be helpless to something, they're worse thing. I guess they have Deluge. They could Toxic Deluge for like 9 or something, but
to be fair, most decks are also helpless to Void Winnower.
I mean, most decks are in a deep hole. I don't know if they're like literally helpless.
You're definitely more helpless than others.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When like 90% of your deck is even cost. That's pretty hilarious, but that is our off-meta, unofficial, official off-meta champion. Congrats to Wiggs. It's honestly a super cool list. I will try to make sure that I put the link in the description. If not, you can go to the EDH Top 16 and look at it. But this is a deck that I would want to put together for like 2 games, play it, have it either go horribly wrong or horribly right, and then never touch it again. But man, it looks really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Had his Gyruda phase in college.
But as we come to our close, the fact that Gigan / Gyruda was in the deck here inspired us for our Bedwed Dead, as we will be doing a Bedwed Dead for companions. Mind you, not necessarily the cards being companions, but the cards themselves. Them being a companion can weigh into this. But we've got Zerda, we've got Gigantha, and then we have the one that
Lurrus?
was the most, the one that was the most impactful for other formats, Lurrus.
All right, well, I don't know who said it, but someone said power is the greatest aphrodisiac, and you could honestly make a case that Lurrus might be the most powerful Magic card. It is the only card to be banned in modern Vintage. Banned in Vintage, not restricted. Black Lotus is restricted. Lurrus was banned.
For good reason.
For power level.
For
power level, before they routed how companions work. That card was literally too strong for Vintage, even as a one-of. So, and I mean, the card is still bonkers. Like, being able to get a 2 or less out of your graveyard every turn on a 3/2 lifelink, like, that is a good Magic card. Like, I don't wonder if it's not a little bit underplayed in this format. I mean, I just have to respect it did something that no other Magic card has managed to do, and so I'm gonna have to wed Lurrus. Like, that's just impressive. It's like marrying Elon Musk or something. It's just like, wow.
We're viewing that as a good thing?
I mean, he's the richest man in the world. He's successful by pretty much any definition of the word. I mean, you don't have to like him in everything he does, but
fair enough.
I mean, you could do a hell of a lot worse than him.
I mean, marrying someone, killing them for their money, all valid strategies here.
No. You know what? Never mind. I'm going to move on. I was going to say something. I thought better of it.
Good choice.
Okay, so, we're wedding the powerful. So, I think I'm gonna have to bed. What is it called? Zerda. I'm gonna bed Zerda.
Mm.
And you can make your furry jokes about that, but honestly, the card is just solid. Like being able to reduce activated abilities, it does cute things with Basalt Monolith, powerful value engine for a minute there with Thrasios. Thrasios Bruce was a thing for a moment. It ran Zerda. I think people have actually put that in a deck as an actual companion before. Like it does some nice stuff for some decks. It's a good card. It's a well-designed card. I like it. Do I want to be around it all the time? Am I going to put it in every deck that has red and white in it? No. But as a bed, I think that's a good one. I will bed Zerda, which means we are killing Gigantha. So now I'm the resident 5-color guy here, so you'd think I'd be all about Gigantha, and I mean, as a card in the 99, it can do some stuff. You could probably build a halfway interesting commander deck out of it, but I don't know. I just feel like you have better options in 5-color with which to do that. I mean, sure, it taps for Wooburg, but it's Wooburg with some restrictions. You can do things with Nagila and Derevi, and it's adorable. But like, if you're gonna run if you're gonna run this thing as a partner, like realize you're paying 8 mana for it, and you're being cut off of like quite a few of the strongest cards in the format. Like, I don't get the couple of people out there who are trying to make it work as a companion.
If it was before the errata, then it'd be a whole other story.
But even after, I'm pretty sure some people still had it as a companion even after the errata. But it's like, you know what? To me, we can do better. Like for 5 mana, I need more than Gigantha in my deck. That's a lot of mana. So I think it's big game season here. I think we're gonna dead the big elk.
Rip the big elk.
Yeah, 9-point buck I got up there on my wall.
But I believe that brings us to me if we're doing our standard order of things. And just because I feel bad for you killing the big boy of Gigantha, and partially because honestly the name is so fun to say. Like whether you pronounce it with a hard J or a soft J, it's a lot of fun. I think Gigantha is just a beautiful word, and for that reason, I will be betting it. You're talking about how.
I got to stop you there. So I killed it, and then you decided to bet it. Do I have that right? Is that the correct order of events?
I'm not killing. Well, it's still living in my reality.
I hope it's living.
Okay, continue. Continue.
I was not.
No further questions.
That is not at all what
No further questions, Your Honor.
No, it is not. It is not undead. It is an elemental elk, not an undead elk.
What I'm learning here is we have to watch Fetch if he ever goes to Kuma's house and it's mounted on the wall.
Oh no! Can I change my answer? Is it too late?
No.
No, but I yes, it's 5 mana, and that does have its downsides. But it produces mana. It is probably the most viable as a commander pick. Like, of the 3 of these, I would pick Gigantha as my commander above the other ones.
I've seen Lurrus as a commander. It's better than you'd think.
Really?
It's still Orzhov.
For a while.
Thing is, yeah, it's Orzhov rather than 5 colors, so I don't know about that. Either way, it's also because I'm not a Zerda fan. Zerda is absolutely getting killed. No offense to Foxes, but like, Zerda is not my style of gameplay. Yes, Zerda is one of the more viable ones. Zerda with Bruce Thrasios is fantastic. I don't like Zerda. I don't like Bruce Thrasios. It's not for me. It's just not me. So I'm sorry, Zerda.
What does the fox say? Nothing, you idiots. The fox is dead. He's locked in my basement.
Kuma stole what does the fox say joke from me.
Oh my. Why is this what we are?
Because I'm very tired right now.
Oh, fair. And for our third companion, obviously I have to go for Obosh the Piercer. This is a joke.
Oh, what?
Obosh is the Rakdos companion.
I know what it is. I played Standard during Ikora.
I actually do love that card. I think it's super cool. But no, Lurrus, I mean, it's a cat nightmare. We've got where one of Ka0s's cats is named after Lurrus. It feels only right to wed it. Like, having Lurrus in my life for the rest of it. Admittedly, it's cat nightmare, so it might be a short rest of my life, but worth it.
So you're marrying a cat girl.
Yes, exactly.
Did I steal that one too, Neko?
No, you're good.
I also do think Lurrus is a really cool card, and it's probably my favorite of the three.
So, I guess it's my turn. Gigantha. Now that's a card I could tap. With that said, for Wooburg. With that said, you can't do it right away. Gigantha, you gotta wine and dine the elk first, right? It's a little shy, it's taking its time, and that's okay. You gotta wait a turn at least before you can really start using it to its full potential. But when you do, being able to abuse the effects in certain decks, Sisay, of course, I ran Gigantha in the 99 for a little while, and having that as a Wooburg option is really strong, durable. You can untap it multiple times. There are a lot of cute things you can do with it. 5 colors means it has a lot of good options. And out of the 3, it would be the one I would consider being the best companion. Not that any of them are great, per se, right now, but it's the one I would like the most, I think.
Lurrus works with, what's his name? Jensen?
Mm-hmm.
True, I forgot. I did forget Jensen exists. You'll have to excuse me.
I gotta say, Jensen Lurrus is better than anything you're doing with Gigantha as a companion.
Okay, I go back on that last statement. Regardless, I will choose to wed the elk.
Very nice.
So Zerda. So, like Kuma said, the fox says nothing here because Kinnan is beating it over the head with a mallet.
Oh, dang.
The podium is Kinnan is on top of the Empire State Building in first, and then the fox is just on top of a car down on the road, right? That's the difference between these two.
Or under its tires.
I don't know. It has legs to stand on, right? You still can do stuff. I think the big difference between the two is, of course, the colors and other reasons you can point to, but colors being the biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think there's any real use for that card. I don't think you can really play it as a commander. I don't think it will see much play in the 99, even in a deck like brew Thrasios. There are just so many better ways to generate infinite mana for Thrasios right now. So I will also dead the fox, which means Lurrus. I will be betting the cat. Lurrus likes to get down and dirty, down in the graveyard. The atmosphere could be nice. Could be fun. Plus, you can do it multiple times if you have like Displacer Kitten. Bring in a second kitty in there and, real party. But no.
I'm trying so hard not to make a certain joke right now. Neko will probably do it.
Keep it clean. Keep it clean.
I'm keeping it clean. It's PG down in the graveyard. But no, I like that you can do things with Displacer Kitten or Eternal Witness, right? Or I guess not Eternal Witness, has to be Displacer Kitten Lurrus, where you can make infinite mana. That goes really well in decks like Kenrith, for example. So it has that ability. Like you said, it does well in Jensen. It can do well for a lot of strategies. And I respect that. I can just never find a place for it in my decks. I've thought about it in Sisay, but it was only a fleeting thought. So, yeah, I'll bed Lurrus.
Very nice. I do want to say, though, the art for all of the companions are gorgeous.
Absolutely. They knocked it out of the park.
They did. I enjoy them.
I understand why they had to change the mechanic to make it garbage. But
Possibly the most busted mechanic they ever made, including Storm and Dredge.
Quite possibly. But I honestly did kind of love it as a mechanic, and I loved the cards. It's just, it was too strong.
This is off topic and we can cut this if needed. I'll be curious to see if anything similar happens to Discover, because that seems like another thing that could easily be changed depending on how the various formats turn out.
We survived Cascade, we'll survive Discover.
But sad that, in a way, all of the companions got killed, but happy we could highlight them a little bit here. Either way, that brings us to the end of our podcast, and it went way longer than I expected when we didn't talk about anything special. Just a lot of really unique, really cool top 16 lists.
Hey, those of you top 16, you are special. I don't care what Fetch says, okay?
But thank you all for making it this far, for getting through this entire thing. Thank you to all of our patrons, especially Frenchie at our Feldar Guardian tier, as well as everyone else. I'm keeping it short because we've got to get out of here. It's been too long, and we're recording this just before Thanksgiving, so don't want to. We're all Americans here, so we want to be able to actually enjoy ourselves a bit. So, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you put down below your thoughts on companions, and honestly, I would love to hear your thoughts on the mechanic in general, because I personally, even though it was crazy busted, I do think it was a really cool mechanic before it got eroded.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got it right when they fixed it. It was definitely wrong the first time around.
I think they might have over-nerfed it, but I do understand why they needed to. Either way, that brings us to an end. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you around next time.
See ya.